Okay, the next thing on tap is testing the catalytic converter, or how to test the catalytic converter. I'm not going to talk about all these, just the ones that are important for you for now. We got the light off test, snap O2, cranking CO2, misfire, punch through, and the temperature test. All these are different ways you can test the cat, but understand this, you're never testing the cat unless it's in fuel control. O2 sensor switching and the short-term fuel trim and long-term fuel trim says that the vehicle is within fuel control. Snap O2 test. Run an engine for 25 RPMs and wait for stable exhaust readings within an O2 level no higher than 0.5%. If the O2 level will not go below 0.5, stop the test. So basically, you got this car in the analyzer and you're revving the throttle and you're watching the O2. If it's above 0.5%, you cannot do this test. You gotta do something else. If it goes below 0.5%, snap the throttle. Once you snap the throttle, look at the analyzer. As the CO is climbing, you're going to watch the O2 also. When the CO climbs, the O2 should not rise no more than 1.2%. It should be under that. If the oxygen level, did I say that right? When the CO is climbing up, when the CO is climbing, the O2 level should not exceed 1.2. A good cat, the O2 level will be below 1.2%. I personally don't like this test. Too many variables. Right? I've seen it fill too many cars that the cats was okay. But that's one of the tests. Cranking CO2 test. This is a good one. I use this one all the time. Run an engine at 25 RPMs to ensure the catalytic converter is hot. Turn off the ignition. This immediately after the engine stops, disable ignition. Now it says ignition, not fuel pump. You need fuel going into the cab. And crank the engine over while watching the CO2 levels on the exhaust analyzer. The CO2 level should reach and maintain 12% or higher. A good cat will go higher than 12% for about 10 seconds, at the end of 10 seconds. If the CO2 level does not reach at least 12%, or the CO level only spikes to 12%, the catalytic converter has failed the test, and the test should be repeated to confirm it's bad. Continue cranking the engine for another 10 seconds, of a total of 20 seconds. This is if it passes the first one. The CO2 should remain over 12%. If the CO2 level can't be maintained over 12%, then the converter has failed and the test should be repeated. Now this is a good test. Misfire test. I use this one also because you can't use the CO2 and everything. So this is another one I use. Return the vehicle to idle after preconditioning. That's meaning I had this car at 2,500 RPMs for 2 minutes. I returned to idle and I turned the car off. I disable the spark plug. Do not allow the engine to cool. Do not allow the engine exhaust system to cool down. This must be done and the engine restarted within 3 minutes. Start the engine without touching the throttle and allow it to idle. As you induce the misfire, the AC should start to climb dramatically for several seconds. Then they're going to start to come down. The AC should drop off significantly. A good cat on this particular test should drop more than 50%. But also, this is a good test also. The switch index ratio test. You can see here it says B1S1 front O2 sensor, B1S2 back O2 sensor. Now, this is testing the catalytic converter for the ability to store oxygen inside the selenium. Think of the catalytic converter as a storage tank for oxygen. When O2 goes into the cat, it's stored in something called the metal that's called selenium. When it needs to be released, it comes out and helps oxidize AC and CO. So that's why you consider the catalytic converter a storage tank for oxygen. If it wouldn't store, it would just come out. It would go in and come right out, and it would look like this picture here. This picture is showing us a defective catalytic converter. or the converter is not working sufficiently. If the front O2 sensor is switching 100 times, the back O2 sensor should be switching less than 70% of that. You want to see a 70% difference between the front and back O2 sensor. That is telling you the selenium inside the cat is storing the O2. If it's matching, that means that selenium is not working correctly. It's not holding the O2. Or too much air went in and it can't hold all of it, either or. Now it's called an oxygen storage capacity test. Now, what this is testing is the ability of that cat, selenium again, to store and hold that oxygen by running a storage capacity test. What's happening here, you injection propane into the vehicle, and at that time the computer is going to try to lean out the air-fuel mixture. You're going to remove the propane and watch the O2 sensor drop between the front and back O2 sensor. You should see a 2% separation between the front drop and the back drop. Let me say that again. You should see a 2-second separation between the front O2 sensor and the rear O2 sensor. Okay, so in other words, I got the front O2 sensor switching, I got the back O2 sensor, it should be steady. I'm going to add propane and they both going to go fixed high, rich, because I'm adding propane. At that time, the computer is going to try to lean out the air-fuel mixture. We're going to turn the propane off. Both O2 sensors should drop. That's how you tell the cat is good. When they both drop, it goes lean. The front one should drop immediately because it just went lean. But the selenium inside the catalytic converter is going to hold the oxygen from going lean until it fills itself up and punches through to the back. That means you should see a delay in the back O2 sensor. That should drop 2 seconds or more later, indicating the catalytic converter is storing oxygen. If it drops the same time as the front one, that means that cat's not working sufficiently. Now this picture here is an air-fuel sensor. What I just told you is going to be the opposite of the front O2 sensor in the back, but it's still the same test. For example, this is bank 2. Go ahead. This is bank 1 sensor 2. That's the back one. And this blue down here you can barrely see it. Also bank 1 sensor 1, air fuel sensor. At this point, I'm looking at this one and the blue here. Propane is being added. Now this is an air fuel sensor. It does the opposite of the zirconium O2 sensor. It's literally going down for rich, but the back one's going up for rich. At this point here and here, we add propane to make the vehicle rich. And at that point, the computer should be trying to lean out the air-fuel mixture. This point here, see this right here? This one and this one. We turned the propane off. It went lean here. Now it's backwards. It's backwards of a zirconium O2 sensor. It went lean here and lean here. You can see that's more than a 2 second separation. As you can see it's 10.7 here and 24 over here. It's almost 14 seconds. Now on the other one, bank 1 sensor 1 and bank 1 sensor 2, this one here, I want lean here and lean here. That's a 6 second separation. It's still good, right? But this one's much better. But it's called an OSC. It's called an OSC Oxygen Storage Capacity Test. Now, And those are a little confusing as the airfill sensor. The airfill sensor actually works the opposite of a zirconium O2 sensor. Let's see if I can get a picture of that for you. Here is a this is an airfill sensor here. The airfill ratio sensor, they perform the same function as a zirconium O2 sensor with some added benefits. It allows a more accurate field control over a much wider range. It usually runs 10 to 1 up to 20 to 1 and runs very lean with no drivability problems. It becomes operational within 10 seconds. And informs the PCM exactly how rich or lean the airfill ratio is. Most newer cars, especially European cars, have an airfill sensor. And again, it works the opposite of a zirconium O2 sensor. The reason why, it has a pumping cell in there. It pumps oxygen in and out of the chambers. This is the airfill setup here. You got a reference voltage, a diffusion chamber, and a pump cell. Alright, so this pumping cell is actually pumping oxygen in and out of the diffusion chamber and the reference cell. Okay, so this thing has a pumping cell inside of it. So you got a pumping cell and a sensor cell here. Not made up like a zirconium. This is a zirconium oxygen sensor. See, it's just one sensor. It has a zirconium element, sensing exhaust, and compares O2 content to outside air. A really simple setup compared to this air fuel sensor. This has two oxygen sensors inside one sensor. So it actually has two zirconium sensors inside one sensor. But inside of it, it uses a sensing cell and a pumping cell. It has a pumps air in and out of a diffusion chamber. So when you look at this sensor, it doesn't move up and down like a zirconium sensor. On a, say you have on a Toyota, you might see, I think it's 3.3 volts steady, and that's good compared to a zirconium sensor where it goes from 100 to 900 millivolts. But anyway, this is the ways you test the O2, test the catalytic converter and the airflow sensor. You gotta know it's different from the zirconium sensor. Okay, any questions, hit me up in class.